Battling multiple autoimmune diseases and navigating the complexities of leaky gut syndrome, Andra found herself trapped in a 300-pound body. Yet, it was through these personal battles, to include multiple different traumas throughout her lifetime, that she honed her unwavering resolve and leveraged the very science she had dedicated her life to. Embarking on a journey of self-discovery and healing, Andra charted a course to wellness that was both enlightening and liberating.
Welcome to Awakening Soul Divinity, your sacred space for deep healing and transformation. Listen to inspiring conversations with healing experts, spiritual guides, and teachers as we explore ancient wisdom, modern healing, and powerful stories of change. I'll also share practical insights from my personal journey, from spiritual crisis to inner purpose. Whether you're seeking to overcome anxiety, embrace your true nature, or awaken your higher self, this podcast offers guidance to help you transform your life and elevate collective consciousness.
Yeah. Welcome, Andra. Let me just say how enlightening that was to me when we were having our conversation. So thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it, and I'm grateful to be able to share this conversation with you.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I really enjoyed our last conversation.
Yeah, me too. And I'm so excited that you decided to join me on my journey, because this is just so powerful for people to just get to see and meet and hear others who have gone through traumatic experiences and come out on the other side, in a totally different place, So yeah, I'm looking forward to this conversation. So let's get started. So, can you go a little deeper into this trauma that you experienced so our audience can hear how profound it really is?
There were so many. I was raised very poor by a single mom. My dad had died before I made it home from the hospital. My mother got hit by a car and then gave birth to me. So I was in New York Foundling Hospital for a while after birth. So my dad had already died prior to that. But from what I understand, he was a little bit of a philanthropist, and he probably wouldn't have been in the picture anyway. So, but my mother had a very abusive childhood, and abuse begets abuse. So she wasn't the type of person to say, I love you, or to put her arms around you. And I really didn't get it growing up until I saw her try to embrace her mother and her mother sit with her hands at her side. But I heard things like, I should have put you up for adoption, things that children really shouldn't hear. So I always grew up feeling like I didn't belong. If I didn't belong in my own house, then how would I belong somewhere else? And it did create these identity blocks, I guess you could say. I gravitated towards people who really weren't good for me because I thought they'd be more accepting of someone like me. What someone like me was, I wasn't really sure. Yeah. But I just gravitated to the wrong people. I got hit by a drunk driver very early on. I did have sexual trauma in my past. Somebody slipped me a roofie at a party, and I was found dead outside my mother's door, not breathing. So, and it was someone that knew me, but didn't know me well enough to know that I hadn't lived with my mother in a while. So not knowing that who it was, or that it was someone who was close to me, was enough for me to pick up and leave and start my life again. Somewhere else, because I didn't know who in my circle wasn't good for me, but I felt like I kept meeting those same kinds of people. And I would feel like that several times in my life, where is it them or is it me? Because what's wrong with me that I keep meeting the same type of people? And over the years, I did a lot of that inner work, but after getting hit by the car, I broke my spine. I was told I would never walk again. So that was very traumatic to hear at 15 years old. And then I would start walking, and I was progressing through that, and then got diagnosed with cancer and told that there was a good chance that I might not be able to have children if I had the surgery. And all I ever wanted to be was a really good mother. So I don't know. So just things like that. And then I would get it again in my 20s. But I felt like a lot of what was happening to me was lack of gratitude in my life for what I did have. That when I was less grateful, these kinds of things were more attracted to me like a magnet. And that my conversations were with myself were exactly the ones I was having with other people. So people say that your exterior world reflects your inner world. And I really do believe that, because my mother was a smart woman, and we did resolve our differences before she died, and had a great relationship, but she couldn't give me love that she never has experienced herself.
Sure.
And
Sure. Yeah.
but the conversations that I would have with myself were very negative. I wanted to die. I didn't understand why I was here. I felt like I was meant to suffer. So I enveloped myself. I dove into writing. I was always writing, so it's no surprise that I'm writing now. Or that in a very short time I put out 30 books, because those were 30 books about healing those parts of me that I finally was able to free,
Mhm.
doing that inner work. And even a lot of the journey with the weight loss and getting back into my size threes and correcting all of those things in my health, reversing the autoimmune, managing my thyroid, finally getting it to where it needed to be, was me believing in myself, that I deserved
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, and I mean that's a good undercurrent for, like, I don't know at what point. Like, for me, believing in myself didn't happen until I walked through a lot. It
Yeah.
wasn't like that thing that was underneath the surface that helped me get through it, for sure. It was actually what I went through led me back to believing in myself. So, like, for people who are overweight, and like we mentioned that you were over 300 pounds. That's,
Correct.
I mean, that's
I was 316 or 326. It's been almost
wow.
15
Wow.
years now.
Yeah. So
But that
what
was
would,
the first time I got on the scale. I was more. I had already lost
oh
weight.
my God, wow. So
So
what would you say to people who are struggling with leaky gut, or losing weight because of autoimmune, or for whatever reason to lose weight? Because a lot of people don't have, like, specific, well, being overweight causes specific or certain illnesses or whatever, but what did you do besides, like, what led you in? Can you kind of share for
okay,
people who are struggling with that? Like, I'm struggling trying to get the question out right now. So that's, so
well,
what would you say to
understood.
them?
So I had been managing people's life my entire life. I've been a nurse for a really long time. Um,
Yeah.
Before I went into nursing, I had always been in health. I started as a candy striper. So
Mhm.
I did phlebotomy, EKGs, you name it in health, I had been a part of it. So I was very discouraged by the science that I had given my life to, because I went to people looking for those answers because I didn't believe in myself. And I got, perhaps I like to eat too much. Perhaps I was happy. Um, there was nothing wrong with me. Your labs are normal. And I knew I had a thyroid disease because I had a thyroid disease my whole life. And after I got hit by the car, they had told me that it disappeared, which I knew was a load of horse poop, right? So I just started doing what I had always done. So what really got me into that body was the trauma of my sister. I lost my best friend, my sister, my aunt, my grandmother, and then later my mother. But I wasn't dealing well with the death of my sister. She was the closest person I had in this world who really got me. and that I always felt was in my corner. And instead of dealing with the grief, I
Hmm.
held on to it, and it had no place to go in my body. And I had always taken care of my thyroid disease with food. And all of a sudden, I wasn't eating. So my body said, uh-oh. So I kind of went into starvation mode because I wasn't feeding my body the things I had always fed it, the way I had always taken care of it. So when I stepped back to look at it, it was my mother who said one of the nicest things she ever said to me. She said, if anybody can figure this out, you can. She said, you're the smartest person I know, and
Yeah.
you do this for a living. You do this every day. You help people, you save lives. And that kind of gave me that aha moment. Like, why am I looking outside myself? Because I did try the Jenny Craig, I did try the other stuff, and I was looking outside of myself like so many people do
Mhm.
today. Because when you lack in an area or you find yourself in an area that you've never been in before, you do have that imposter syndrome. Everybody does. People talk about it
Yeah.
like it's a bad thing, but it's about going through that and stepping out of that comfort zone. So I said, well, the doctors I worked with were brilliant. They told me that I should have been a doctor. They said the stuff that you come up with, and you're always right, is like unbelievable. And so I approached a doctor that I really liked, and I said, I really need your help. I said, I'm going for lab tests and they keep coming back normal, and I know they're not. I said, can you check me for autoimmune disease? Can you do this test? Can you do this test? He said, Andra, if you think something's wrong, I'm sure there is. He said, I don't think you have hypo. He said, you're a little bit hyper. And this was me in that big body. He said, but all right, I'll check you. And when he came back, my thyroid was at coma levels. And from there, I knew what to do because I had always eaten for my thyroid. But I also knew that those autoimmune diseases were directly linked to the gut because I had spent years before
Mhm.
that studying that just because I had a desire to know it because with the thyroid, I always had constipation issues. I had GERD. I had a hiatal hernia, all these things that had happened to me over years in my childhood. I had ulcers throughout my childhood. So I had all these issues going on even before the thyroid, and I didn't really know which one came first, if I'm being honest. So I said, well, let's just bring them both up together. Let's do things that are good for my gut and good for my thyroid, and
Mhm.
let's see what happens. And I started doing really well, really quickly. I started feeling
Awesome.
better, that
Yeah.
gastric reflux, all those things that were happening, the depression, because depression is a big part of weight loss. It is if you're struggling with weight loss, there is a problem in your digestive system. Either you're not absorbing the nutrients that you're taking in,
Mhm.
or you're not eating the types of nutrients you need to feed your body. But the digestive system runs throughout your entire body. It is connected to every system in your body. So if you want to feed your body well, then you have to work on your digestive system. And the weight loss, I wasn't really sure I could do it because growing up, I was very athletic. And then here I am in this 300-pound body. I can't even touch my toes. So I started trying to touch my toes and I just got closer and closer and closer. I can't do sit ups because of my prior back injury. So I started doing them standing up to make it easier for me. Whatever I had to do to tailor it to my now body.
That's
So
awesome. Yeah.
so that's where you have to start, where you are now. I
Mhm.
wasn't in great shape. I wasn't eating at all. So when I looked back at when I was the healthiest in my life, I was eating like every 2 to 3 hours. That's when I had the Graves' disease, the hyperthyroidism. I was always hungry. I was always feeding myself, and little meals. And I said, well, let's try that because we know that worked,
Mhm.
and it did. It did.
Well, that's interesting. Thank you for saying it that way because what hit me when you said that is we're not, as human beings, we're not a one size fits all anything, right? I mean, you can
Correct.
have this diet plan or you can have this therapy plan, healing, physical, mental, emotional, whatever, all these plans that have been placed out there, but it doesn't mean that it's actually going to work specifically for you in all cases. And one of the things, and I like how you explain that, because one of the things I did when I was going through my my healing journey from the different sorts of trauma was I would always try something, and then if it worked, I'd stick with it until it either stopped working or it gets placed in my toolbox, you know, or I would it would not work at all. And then I was like, next, you know, what's the next thing? So like being able to find the thing, even those little, you know, reaching your toes, that's still exercise at, you know, at that weight. So that got you moving. So it's just these little baby steps. And then you observe what's happening with your body and pay attention, because when you, I think I feel like it's called embodiment, but when you're paying attention to your body speaks to you all the time. And
Right.
if you're not paying attention to your body, you're going to miss little itty bitty cues that your body's giving you, saying, hey, you know, take a look at this or take a look at this. But I feel like how you did that created your relationship, or created a relationship with your body to help
And with
you move
food
to the
again,
next.
with food again also, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
didn't mean to cut you off. I was that emotional eater. So
Mhm.
I wasn't eating after the death of my sister, and when I was eating my emotions.
Yeah.
I
A lot of
wasn't dealing with them, I was eating them. And I started developing that relationship with food again. You know, they say if you want what we have, do what we do. Surround yourself with people that have what you want, or like-minded people, however they say it.
Mm-hmm.
So I surrounded myself with the things I wanted. I wanted better health. So there was more broccoli in my house. There was more fruit on my table. All those things that I knew weren't good, those processed foods, I took them out. I did an elimination diet. I took out gluten that I always felt like I had an intolerance to. I took out soy and I took out dairy. Three things that always irritated my body. And I said, let me see what happens. And the results were astronomical.
Mm-hmm.
All those symptoms that I was having, that digestive upset, the constipation, I added more kefir and things like that. All the things that we talk about today for digestive, I added those all into my life. And
Mm-hmm.
it just, there was no plateaus. I didn't count calories. I didn't stress over any of that. I just made sure that I ate every day, and everything that I ate supported what I was working towards.
Absolutely.
I told
Absolutely.
myself every day, 5 more pounds to go. Every week, 5 more pounds to go. That's why my business is named Pounds to Go. True story.
Okay. All right. Well,
So
there it is. Oh, well, okay. So this is a perfect spot for me to ask this question, because you obviously, and you've given and I know there's more, because you told me, you know, a lot more of what you had mentioned just a few minutes ago about what you've been through. It's staggering to me, the things that you've been through, and the fact that you are um you're in good spirits, you love your life, you've got all these things going on. I mean, of course, you've got things happening around you that you get to work yourself through. We all do. But your energy is so positive and so healing in general for people. So how was your personal healing journey? How did that shape the work that you do now to support others? What is that work? Can you share that with the audience, what you do?
a leaky gut, thyroid, and weight loss expert. I'm
Okay.
still a nurse though, and I am a holistic practitioner. So that's a board certified nutritionist.
So,
So
yes. Okay. All right. So basically, everything you went through was a culmination. Well, not a culmination. The nursing was already in there, but that's what led you to the other piece, because you wanted to be there to help other people, or
more
what
so
was your-
because of COVID, because I
Okay.
was on the front lines. I am that nurse. When they said we need help, I said I'm on my way.
Okay.
It was really, it was really that simple.
Oh, and you
But
were in New York too.
yes,
Yeah.
so
What a front
um,
line place to be. Jeez.
yeah, so but everything that was happening with COVID was digestive health, right? It was affecting 70% of our immunity, right? So I wanted, people were scared. People had questions and nobody was answering them. They couldn't get in to help, get help from doctors. So I opened my first group on Facebook, Ask the Nurse, and told them, ask me, whatever you want to do. And people started asking me about weight loss. And, they knew, a lot of them knew me. The people that were on Facebook and on my pages knew me. And I explained to them that you're not going to lose weight. You're not going to improve your thyroid until you improve your digestive health, because they're all connected. So even when I came online, honestly, a lot of people told me, oh, you got to stick to one thing. I said, yeah, but I really can't. I said, because this is connected to everything. And I said, I've spent my life proving that connection. And as soon as you start separating it, people will get sicker.
But I don't know if you could ever stick to one thing, because your entire life is based on, it's based on all these different things that created who you are today. So you got all these experiences that kind of incorporate the not just one thing. That's how I'm feeling that when you say that. It's so many, like, if you've got a lot of different experiences, then you use those experiences for what you do. So
people say that your message gets lost, though, and my message is the same. Of course, I'm on 13 platforms. My message is the same on every platform: better health. So
right,
maybe that doesn't bring somebody running to me to work with me for digestive, but if someone is really interested in that, I want to be that voice of positivity, that you can do that. So more of my message is about positivity and believing in themselves, because so much of what I do is mindset. People are where I was, that person that didn't believe they could. So even though I had the medical experience and everything else, my mind wasn't in the frame of thinking that I could achieve it, because it wasn't something I had tried to do. I was one of those lucky people that was always thin until I wasn't, right? So I had to change my mind about that. And so many people, everything in this world, Carolyn, is telling us to look outside of ourselves. Everything, right? So, I mean, I suffered with addiction, with alcoholism, all these different things, because I was that perpetual people pleaser and so many other things. And that yes girl. And I started putting myself first. Whenever I'm on a call, someone always rings my bell and wants to talk to me. He never fails.
Okay, I had one too. If you saw me reaching off over here, I was flipping my phone over so I could pay attention to it anyway.
They'll leave it down. They'll leave it.
It's fine.
Probably a delivery, something else I don't need. But the whole idea is to really start looking in. So the more we look outside of ourselves, the sicker we get, because there's always going to be those people in the market that tell us that we're not capable of achieving what we need, that we need their help, that we're not capable of doing this by ourselves. And you don't know what you're capable of until you put your best foot forward and really try, right? So I could have, should have, would have done this sooner if I knew that I was the biggest thing that was standing in my own way. And for so many people, that really is the case. They are standing in their own way, and they do need someone to support them and believe in them. And I love being that person.
That's great.
I've been in health my entire life.
Yeah.
And there's something so amazing about a total stranger inviting you in to help through the hardest times of their life, saying, I need your help. Can you help me? And being able to say, yeah, you can, because you do know what they need, right? So so that was kind of the pivot. The COVID was the pivot. But everything helping people with are all things that I've spent my life struggling with. I always had digestive health, 58 years of thyroid disease. And I was up and down my whole life in weight. This is the first time that I have ever been at a consistent weight for well over a decade.
Nice.
So even with the Graves' disease, I think it was pivoting to autoimmune like Hashimoto's autoimmune, because Graves' autoimmune also. I think it was pivoting because I would always have this period during the year where I'd feel like this weird shift in my body, Caroline. You know, I was always super skinny in the winter and always put on a little weight in the summer when you want to take it off. My whole life. And when I looked back at pictures, I saw that. I said, so it was always shifting, you know?
Let me bring something into this so we can make sure we get this information out there, because I know you and I had talked about when we first met about a lot of different things. But one of the things that you had mentioned is like divinity, God, higher power, things that you often talk about, that we're not separate from God. And I'm going to kind of combine a few questions, but I'll try not to make them all mixed in so they get confusing. But one of the things that happens is when these things happen in our lives, we have this, like you were saying, you were talking about, we're always looking out, and there's a separation in my mind. When we look out instead of inside of us, we kind of separate ourselves from ourselves. And like you had talked about, it happens in the mind as you're going through whatever you're going through. So we're constantly working with the mind and the body to get back together. Can you share how you came to that understanding of the connection, the divine connection? Like how big was that in your process? Because
big part of my process.
That's
big part of my process
is about. Yeah. So
I was very, very religious kid. I wasn't raised that way. So religion is not a good word to use. We were raised Catholic, so on and so forth. But I was very connected to God. Always. I remember sitting by a train and watching it go by and hoping that I was underneath it because I was so depressed. And that was linked to the chronic digestive issues I had. And I remember asking God, because I spoke to him all the time, why would you put me in this world for this? And I don't remember exactly because I was so young at the time, but I think I was actually thinking about killing myself that day. And I remember getting up, and maybe he didn't know, God, if that's what I was doing when I got up, or because I might have just been leaving that area. But I remember getting blown back before the train. I mean, blown, like picked up off my feet and thrown back. And there was no wind that day. It shouldn't have happened. But there were other times in my life where I felt like it could only be God, where I knew it had to be him that saved me, right? And I don't think that God would bring you this far and bring me through all those things if it wasn't a greater purpose.
Not punishment, right?
It's not punishment.
Not punishment.
So my belief about divinity is that we're not a physical person, that this body is created by us because of our separation with our mind, that we are soul aligned people, that we are just spirits, and that we created this because of our ego, you know, and we are trying to get to perpetual betterness. And at the same time we're doing that, we're kind of telling God he doesn't know what he's doing. Because if he's the ruler and he's the one that created everything, how do we tell him that we're not perfect? So I think in that dissociation from thinking that we need more to be better, to have a better life, to do all those things when we were promised the kingdom of God, that dissociation separated us and our belief in ourselves from our mind. And that
the kingdom of God already inside of us?
Yes, the kingdom of God is your digestive system. So I know this sounds crazy, but this is evolution. So God is, from what I understand, and I really, really
the God of your understanding. I have someone else.
The God of my understanding is my digestive system. And let me explain this to you. When a woman gives birth and the child goes through the birth canal, all those microorganisms and everything that that child swallows on the way out becomes that digestive system. It gets lodged into the intestines and it becomes our digestive system, our microbiome that continues to grow for the rest of our life. And we are more microbe than human.
Mhm.
So that is God's way of always being with us. And I know that sounds bizarre, but that voice that we always think we hear, that we don't often listen to, is him. He can't,
You
he
mean our
can't make,
intuition, our gut feeling? Is that what you're
yes,
referring to?
yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yes, our
Okay.
intuition.
Uh-huh.
That is him trying to save us from all those blunders we're trying to make, but he can't make those decisions for us. He can lead us, but at the end of the day, that answer is
Mm-hmm.
up to us. So we are all supposed to be connected as one spirit here in this world. We are all one spirit. And those pieces that people keep looking for, that more, that better, is not about more money, more time, more freedom. It's about supporting more of your fellow man. Because as we do that, we bring those pieces back together because they
Mm-hmm.
are the missing pieces to us, the
And
people.
and you know, you just led right into this one question that I really wanted to ask you is how is the mind body connected and how does that relate to healing and moving into higher or some people call Christ consciousness? So there's like this relationship with everything and you're already relating the gut to the God, to God, you know?
Yes,
And so how does this mind body connection relate to moving into higher consciousness?
because you have to trust that intuition. So when you tune in instead of out. So people that are spiritual are not out in this world, monks and all these people that give up everything to be closer to God. They're not out there looking for more money, more time, more freedom, more businesses, right?
Right,
They are
right.
spending that time, quiet time with God. And it's only when you listen to your body do you understand the connections to the mind. That's the only time. So
Mhm.
you can't be working and navigating and stressing and doing all these things and listen to that inner peace. And when you can find that calm state inside of yourself, that's when you hear that God consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Beautiful. Yeah.
there are some people that hear it often. They're more spiritual than others. But like I was able to shut off my dreams as a very small child because they weren't good. And frankly, I said, do I really need these? And I didn't. So I was able to shut them off. I didn't think when I said, I'm never going to dream anymore, that I wouldn't dream anymore. But
Mm.
I didn't. And recently, I said, I wonder what would happen if I said, hey, I would like to dream again. And the other day, for the first time in a really long time, I had a dream and I remembered. And it
Like,
was so bizarre. And I said,
yeah.
wow. So we are the culmination of what we believe. So if we believe that we are going to have better health, then we are, because we are in control of this body. So if we have all of the same powers that God has,
Mm-hmm.
he's created us in his likeness, not in his image, in his likeness. So certainly he's stronger than we are, right? So I mean, there's a book, The Course in Miracles. I really advise people to read that book. But the book that came later, The Disappearance of the Universe, was meant to be a precursor of that book. That is actually the beginning where it all started. And
That's the name of the that's the name of
the
the book.
disappearance of the
Disappearance of the
universe.
Universe.
Yes.
Okay.
So so it talks about how most of what we are today are things that were taught to us through generations and we were taught wrong. It talks about and this book, The Disappearance of the Universe, is supposed to be God's interpretation, Jesus, the Son of God.
Mm-hmm.
So It's Jesus's interpretation, and he says what he did say and what he didn't say. So it's with two gentlemen. Two gentlemen go to visit a man who wants a higher connection to God. So two angels come down and they tell him the story of what life is all about. So their message to him is to bring people back home. That way, and going back home is about forgiveness, learning to forgive, not just yourself, but others, and to helping them. So if someone needs $1 and we need that, we have that dollar and we just don't help, then we're not helping ourselves because he is connected to us in some way.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We may not know it in that minute, but why can't you help your possible brother, your possible sister? Is that dollar going to kill you? Right? So so that's kind of what the book talks about. And I really believe it. I felt such a presence of God while I was reading both of these books. The Course in Miracles is a really hard book to read. And it's a really hard book to read. And I said to my girlfriend, I asked her, I said, have you ever read this book? She said, Andra, I tried so many times. It's really hard to get through. I said, well, I'm glad you said that. I said, because they have books for dummies all the time, math for dummies, golf for dummies. I said, so I got to thinking, what if they had a Course in Miracles for dummies? And I said, turns out they do.
Interesting. Okay.
And it's on audio. So it's on audio. And it was, I think I got through the book in 2 days. And that was going through it twice because I found it so fascinating. Because there's so much third party, fourth party stuff when you're in the first one. You don't know if they're talking about you and what you should do, or if they're talking about what's God wants us to do. So when I was trying to read it on my own, it led to more questions than answers. But when I listened to it in the audio, it made perfect sense. And the disappearance of the universe left me feeling like everything I had ever been taught was a lie. And if that's true, should I be focusing on buying that house, creating a bigger business? Should I be doing that? And is it necessary? Because this is not what you want, right?
Yeah.
You want me to forgive and stuff. And it talks about, so the deliverance of the universe talks about having abundance and having all those things, and that it's totally okay. But that's not why we're here. We're here to bring everybody back to God, to believe that they were always whole, that they're not missing anything, that he's already given them everything they need. And if they want a better existence, it's only with him that they can have it. So in these books, it talks about in heaven there is no male or female, that everybody is the same.
When you were talking about that, now I've had this happen a lot in the last probably month and a half with everything that's been going on. And there's this thing that I feel like a lot of people are having when I recognize it in myself, and you're kind of saying it, but that's why I was laughing. I was grinning when you were talking about it. There's like this cognitive dissonance thing going on. And for those of you that don't know what cognitive dissonance is, it's basically truth coming out and kind of blowing your mind because you learned things in a certain way and it's not the way it is, just by what Andra was explaining. And like I said, for the last month and a half, all this information, and I'm trying not to get lost in the whole of the Facebook thing, but there are some really interesting things that people are posting, which makes sense. And then every so often I'll hear something, it's like, whoa, what the heck? So the reason I brought that up is because I want people to understand that I feel like the more that happens and the more we hear things that we weren't really taught that it's going to cause that inside of us. So it's important to recognize that and work with that to be able to heal, what you think compared to what there actually is happening. Because what is actually happening, and you said this, is inside of you. It's not out there. What you're reaching for out there, it's all an illusion. The truth, the joy, the love, all these things that we want, happiness, all whatever that is, it's all inside of us. And the main, only in my mind, way to get to that is through healing. But cognitive dissonance is going to cause a little bit of like, until you understand that it's there for a purpose, because we're learning truths right now. And it's not easy, however. And the reason I brought that up was because from your perspective, though, can you offer a piece of advice now that people know that they're being cognitively disonanced? Can you offer a piece of advice to someone who's just starting on their healing journey? What would that be? What would that be like?
To believe that they're capable of it, and to tell themselves they are, whether they believe it or not, because the mind only knows what you tell it. It doesn't know the truth from a lie. So if you say, I'm going to do this, one of the things I said to myself, and we are all capable of healing all the diseases in our body. We are. That's our born right. So one of the things
your finger? Ever cut your finger? Your body heals it. So
yeah. So one of the things I told myself when I was on that journey was I'm my perfect weight at 125 pounds. Instead of saying I have 100 to lose and coming from a negative place, that's why I did the 5 pounds every week, 5 more pounds to go. Yeah. I came from a place of being where I wanted to be already and just believing it as so until it became my truth, right? So when people are talking about millions of dollars, and they're skimping to pay the bills, you can't be in abundance and be in lack at the same time. Well, you can't be in health and be in a place of negativity. Those two don't work together.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because when you were talking, the words for versus against came up. So what you were saying is that as you were going through your journey, you are putting in the positive energy words, like I am already 125 pounds, 5 pounds a week, all these things. That to me is the energy of being for something. We have, even with people who are genuine about wanting to change things and doing things in a better way in this world, for whatever reason, and words have energy, and it connects with the mind. And when you start thinking these words, it will create that energy. So when you're saying, I'm against such and such and such and such, it's doing the same thing as, well, I got 100 pounds to go. And, there's a difference in energy with words. And so when we talk about being for something, like losing weight in a positive mindset, or being against it, I got 100 more pounds to go, the words have this energy. Do you want to touch on any of what I just said, or maybe help out with that?
I don't know if you're familiar with Chad Helmstetter, but he's someone, I used to sell Amway. I always had a side hustle, something
what's the name again? What was the name?
Chad Helmstetter.
So he Amway.
No, he used to speak at Amway conferences. Okay. So Chad Helmstetter is a writer, but he is a scientist, and he talks about the power of positive thinking. He talks about your mind being able to regenerate and change, right? So he was one of the first people, the first scientists that talk about the power of positivity. So I heard him speak at a conference like so long ago, and I bought his book. And he talks about how our lives being like a factory and everything we want is in that factory. And when we say, oh, I really want that car. If you're passing a car in the street, boy, I'd really love that Rolls Royce. And picture that guy getting there with the truck, getting the Rolls Royce and putting it on. And then you say, but I could never afford that.
Right.
Back it goes. And
Yeah.
we spend most of our life in that pendulum.
Mm-hmm.
So it is about retraining your mind and telling yourself. So he was one of my favorite people, and I think he's inspired me the most in my life without even really realizing it. I just happened at an Amway conference, and he was there. And then I started following him and looking at his books and things like that. And Mary Morrissey, she talks about retraining your brain, and her favorite thing is to add up until now. So if you say,
Yeah.
I'm terrible at remembering people's names, at the end of that sentence, put up until now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I have difficulty losing weight up until now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
I'll never be able to get through this course material up until now.
Right,
So
right.
it's because that turns that negative into a positive. And I know it sounds ridiculous, but I walked around saying those things to myself on a
Yeah.
regular basis because so much of what was happening in my life and the things I was seeing, the people that kept coming into my life that were really no good for me emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. I mean, they were just not good mates for me. Were the people, the things that I was telling myself I deserved, right? Because we have the most conversations with ourselves. So I started changing that. And I remember telling my husband I was going to lose that weight. It was like, okay. I remember when we were going to a storage facility and I had so many clothes in there in size 3, and he said, you'll never get into that again. I said, just watch me. And I remember taking out that stuff and saying to him, guess what I'm wearing today?
Yeah.
And, it is about changing your mind, and it is about getting support and the right support, right?
Mm-hmm.
So part of there's a lot of health coaches online. There's a lot of health professionals online. It is about you having to be able to have a relationship with them. So I might not be for everybody, but I'm only going to be able to help them as honest as they are. So if they're hiding things from me and they're not telling me those weaknesses, then I can't help them make them their strengths, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you have to be and you have to be honest with yourself. You have to know yourself. I knew that I was a big snacker, so I took those things out of my environment so I didn't have to deal with it until I was able to make better choices.
Mm-hmm.
I surrounded myself with only choices that would be healthy.
Yep.
Right? So, you have to, and everybody is different in a different way than most people understand. Everybody has a genetic makeup. Everybody does. And part of health, a small percentage, is genetics. The other part is the lifestyle. It is the nourishment we're giving our bodies, both physically and emotionally, the things we're telling ourselves. Because if you're emotionally broke, you're not healthy. You're just not. Okay. Right. And as someone who was both spiritually and emotionally broke for a very long time, I know that I was anything but healthy. And those things contribute to that 300-pound body. Mm-hmm. So journaling and having those conversations with yourself. I woke up in my 30s. I had no idea what made me happy. It was a very rude awakening.
Tell me about it.
I had a great job, great marriage, and I was not happy.
Mm-hmm. And that happens with a lot of people. So
you have to be honest with yourself and have those conversations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, how would you define awakening?
I wrote a book.
Okay.
Awakening
I
the
need
light
a short
within.
answer, not the book. Wait, all right. We'll get a link to your book. How's that?
Awakening. So that's just a book on positive affirmations.
Okay.
But awakening is coming home to self. It's about
Yeah.
looking in the mirror and even on your worst days, liking who you see, becoming the person that you want to see in the world, both physically, emotionally, spiritually. So when you're spiritually well, physically well, and emotionally in a good place, you are awoken. So because all you are magnifying all of your parts at that full potential. So
Yep.
we're only using a very small percentage of the capacity of our brains, a very small percentage of our physical ability, because don't forget, we created this. So people are struggling with something that they created. According to that book, God had nothing to do with the body. So
Huh?
if we created this, why are we struggling with it so much? Because we keep thinking everything's outside ourselves and everything we're looking for is inside. All that truth, right? Even in the physical body, everything is going on inside. That sickness is the things we're holding on to. So
Yeah,
all that
that comes
stress.
right. The stress is a big thing, and that comes from like Louise Hay and all these like when we think 80,000 thoughts a day and most of them are negative, you're gonna start to wear your body down because we come into this world for the most part healthy and healed and whole and all this, and then when we get to a certain point we start getting programmed and we start having our all these thoughts that are demeaning ourselves and all this stuff, and it's just yeah, it's a constant thing where we move into what they call
What is
dis-ease.
all hell?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
What is all hell?
yeah. So what does soul divinity mean to you?
It is about accepting all those parts, the good and the bad, because we're not meant to be perfect. And when we strive for perfection, we will always fall short. The only perfection is our creator. We're not perfect. We weren't meant to be perfect,
Mm-hmm.
right?
I
Because
say we're perfectly imperfect.
we are. We're created perfectly in his image, but he
Yeah.
created us to be to not have to worry about being perfect. So we're perfect in his image, but that allows for shortcomings of humans, right?
Right. Right.
But
Yeah.
but
That
it
makes
is accepting all those parts. It is being open, right? So there's so many things that I don't understand. There's
sure.
probably, I consider myself a pretty intelligent person, but there's probably so much more I don't understand than I do. But it is about being open and
Mm-hmm.
not expecting other people to fit into my box, right? Because everybody's different. So,
That's a very
I mean,
important statement. Thank you for that
but
one.
husbands and wives argue all the time. Is he right? Is she
Yeah.
right? They're not right. They're neither one of them. They're just different, and
Or
it
they're
has
both
to.
right.
Yeah, but yeah. So, but they're not right because they're both arguing their point instead
Right.
of agreeing to
Perception.
disagree and
Yeah.
accepting each other as they are, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
when I'm trying to put someone in my box, I'm discrediting who they are as a person. I'm trying to make them smaller than they really are. When I
Mm,
accept them how they are, they can become that beautiful being they are, right? Because that acceptance is what everybody really is out there striving for. They want to be accepted, and they think if they have more money, more time, more freedom, more hair, more boobs, whatever they're focused on, that they'll be better accepted. If I was just skinny, you know, I had to love myself in that 300-pound body
to get out of the 300
to
pound
get out of that
body. Yes.
300
Yeah.
pounds. I
Yeah.
had to look in that mirror and say, oh my God, where did you go? And how do we get back from
Mhm.
here?
Right. Right.
Right.
Wow. That's really powerful. That's
So,
powerful.
but I had to love myself
Yeah.
throughout that journey if I was going to make it. Because
Mm,
if we don't do that inner work and we don't look at all those pieces, we will be back in that 300-pound body because we haven't dealt with what brought us there.
Okay. And just so people know this isn't going to be, because we could go on in an entire conversation about this, but that's why people gain their weight back, because they never took care. They generally don't take care of the thing that caused the weight gain to begin with. Like 9 times out of 10, you tell me if I'm wrong, but what I understand is that a lot of it has to do with your emotion, your mental, emotional, spiritual mismatch, and all the things that you feel about yourself, and I'm not good enough, and protection, and all that stuff. And if you lose the weight and you still feel that way, that's when you gain it back. So you didn't do anything wrong. There's just something that needs healing or looking at.
Yes, and you're trying to put yourself in somebody else's box. So I've been online a long time, and I've treated people with the same disease and gave them different plans because it is about finding out what works for them. So if someone's problem isn't really health, if they're eating a really healthy diet, then I know it's mindset work I have to do with them, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So, and that assessment that I do with them kind of leads to it, because I do ask those questions. When were you in a place where you felt really healthy? How much did you weigh? What was going on in your life? Who was in your life? And they're like, why is that important? Well, were your relationships good? Well, we'll get to that. Were your relationships good, right? Or were they bad, right? Because that tells me what they were feeling and where they were emotionally at that time too. And I can kind of see where a little bit of trauma started to happen. What was your relationship with your mom? Was she supportive, or did she compare you to your sister or your brother?
This is all really good. I'm glad what you just shared leads me into my next question, because I like how you do that, how you bring it to people individually, meeting them where they're at. So the next question is, how can people get in touch with you?
They can book a call on my website, but I am literally on every platform. I have people, Caroline, just reaching out to me, saying, I'm sorry, I haven't been on your page supporting you lately. I had a health scare. And they'll tell me that the doctors didn't give them a plan, and I'll give them that plan.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't expect anything for that. That is my job, and that's what I've done. And if I can't help someone who's out there supporting me, then what kind of person am I? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're showing up for me every day, saying good morning and cheering me on. Why wouldn't I? Right?
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? And Andra's links will be in the description, so you can find her, to reach out to her to get the support. So, Andra, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap up?
I just want them to know that there is no such thing as impossible, that you can really be and do anything you want in this world. But it does come from a place of saying, I want this. What are the steps that I need, and where do I start? Right? Because if you just keep dreaming, then no reality happens. Right?
Take action.
you really do have to take action. So I don't always work my plan perfectly, but I eat well 80% of the time, and 80% is good enough because it keeps me in the same body. Am I an exercise fanatic? Absolutely not. I do 10 minutes every day. I'm not trying to look like Popeye the Sailor Man. I just want to feel good in my body. And exercise is something that feels good for your body. It doesn't have to be going to the gym for 3 hours every day. It doesn't have to be any of that stuff. It has to be something that fits into your lifestyle so you can keep doing it. And so many people are listening to people out there. Listen to that voice inside of you. And if it doesn't sound right, it usually isn't.
In your gut.
Yeah. Listen, it's your second brain. I want to think it's the first.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, Andra, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate all the information you shared, and I'm sure somebody out there got something from this one because this is just very powerful. I mean, you blow me away with all the stuff that you went through, and you still sit in front of me and you're smiling, so thank you for being here. And to everyone in the audience, thank you for being on Awakening Soul Divinity, watching and listening to us, and we'll see you next time. Peace.